Hi, if you're here, you are lucky enough probably to be a teacher. And if you're like us, you are blessed enough to get to have students who speak other languages in your classroom. And this is both wonderful and extremely challenging, which is why Candace and I brought in one of our dearest friends and an expert to help us. Her name is Carmen, and she can tell us what it's like. We're going to interview her about what it's like to learn English and be an outsider from her individual perspective, and then what it's like to be a teacher and an administrator, and how we're going to give tips and tricks to how we can do a better job supporting both ourselves and our students to make the process of learning English more fun and exciting and giving all kids access to their content. So, Carmen, would you start by kind of introducing yourself?
Hi, so I'm Carmen. In my school, they know me as Dr. Corrales. I'm working currently in elementary as an assistant principal. I've been an administrator for the past 5 years and a teacher since 2008. But I grew up with my mom being an educator. So I grew up with the perspective of education. So I remember, I always say, I am not going to become an educator. But
Me too. And here we are.
And then it pulled you in.
Yes. And my mom is like, you're going to become an educator. And I'm like, I am not. And then I learned that when I joined the career, that it was my passion, that I love it. It was just like so easy to do. And that's how I ended up in this profession. So very happy to be here.
Carmen, what's your linguistic background? Yeah.
I was born in Mexicali, Mexico. I immigrated to the United States when I was in my first year of high school. So I didn't come here when I was a little one. I came here when I was, I think I was 16 going on 16, yeah, it's 15 going into 16 years old. I came with no English background. Like I didn't even know door or the colors or anything. So I was placed in high school and one of those ESL classes when I felt that I wasn't not even learning English, even though it was the foundation, the vocabulary. The teachers that I had back then didn't speak Spanish. So one of my ESL teachers, he was from Poland or something like that. I couldn't, like, I remember at the beginning, I wasn't not even able to ask him how to go to the restroom. He didn't understand me. So it was very awakening for me and erased the urgency to Learn English. But I felt that I was stuck in this ESL class where everybody speaks Spanish. And I'm like, I am not listening to English. They will give me vocabulary to learn. And I'm like, okay, done, learn. How do I apply it, right? So by my second year of high school, I was very basic to how to communicate with English. I went to my counselor and I say, you have to get me out of there and put me in all English classes. And they are like, nope, you can do that. You're not going to be successful. And I'm like, yes, I will. And they said no. So I had to convince my mother to go to school and get me out of those classes. And they can't, while my mom went and say, it's a request, you have to do it. They kind of did 50-50 just to kind of like say, let's try it. She's going to go into the math and the social studies, and then we're going to leave the other ones how they are. I excel on those classes. I guess it's because of my personality. I didn't have the language background, but I was very driven to learn the English, and I didn't care what people think, and I didn't care how I was communicating as long as I was communicating. So I learned English super fast. Like I was doing a lot of reading and a lot of and like watching TV in English. Like I forced myself to immerse myself in the language, but naturally it wouldn't happen. And I noticed that a lot of my friends who they let that progression naturally to happen, they were not as proficient as I was. So I know that a lot of our students in schools, they are not having that drive to learn it or to do it for themselves. They are naturally going through the system and they are not advancing as much as I would like or we would like to see through the different grades that they're going through.
Right. So, yeah. So we have a lot of students I know within our district who kind of get stuck in that, where they've been in EL since like kindergarten and they're in 8th grade and they just are stagnant. They just don't exit out.
Exactly. I seen that a lot. I see a lot of them that boom, they leave the program in kinder or first. So by third grade, I think everybody should be leaving the program, to be honest, just because the way that we do education is not bilingual. So they don't get the percentages. It's immersion. Like we throw them in the pool, learn the language. She goes up, lifeguard, catch it, So
Yep.
and the ratio of the English language they listen is like 80% to 20. Like they hardly talk to the parents. So when we have also schools in low socioeconomic status, families also affects that the communication with the parents is not there. They are too busy working, or there is not in their, like whatever is going on, the educational level as well. So they don't practice Spanish anymore. So they start losing the Spanish, at least academically, they don't have it. And the social one, they only get it with the parents or maybe cousins. Some of them families more than others. Average in low socioeconomic families is like almost non-existent. So English becomes very strong. And like we can call it the street language, like they understand the speak, but they still struggle in the reading and the writing. So those are the reasons why also they can talk and they can understand, but when it comes to reading and writing, in general, for an English speaker student, it's hard. Imagine for someone who is a second language too. So
you mentioned that the kids, sometimes it takes them a really long time. And I know that you said previously, by third grade, which would be their fourth year assuming they come to school in kindergarten, by their fourth year, they should have been able to advance out of the EL program. Do you think that changes for kids? I know that your situation, it sounds like you are just a really fast learner. But do you think it changes as kids get older and you have the older kids coming in, like say in middle school, that amount of time should be less or more? How can we help them?
So I think every student situation is different because, for example, if I have students who come in kinder, I still have students in fifth grade who came in kinder, and I'm like, why are you level 2 in English? Like it doesn't make sense to me, right? So when doing SSDs and all these meetings to apply tier 2 interventions, a lot of my EL population are behind academically also in English, right? I noticed that a lot of them do qualify for special education. So there's an underlying condition that is not letting them learn naturally the progression of the language, but there's a lot of others who I think we can call it that they're product of their environment as well, that they don't have that support at home, or well, I can say at home. So the only academic English they get is at school. They don't go home and are exposed in the home to the English. They don't go to these extracurricular activities. They don't have all these kind of exposures to the new language, that it becomes minimal. So if they're not driven to pick up a book and read in English or do it themselves because their parents' educational level is so low that it's not something that is, I can say, promoted in the house, it's most likely that the natural progression of the language is going to last until middle school or even until high school, because it's not something that is urgent for them as well. Another factor that I noticed is that sometimes it's not easy for you. Like, for example, I was very driven to learn the new language. It was very intriguing for me. I was very excited. So it happened really fast. So now I have my kids who are not Spanish speakers, right? And I'm like, how in the world you're not a Spanish speaker? Spanish is my first language. But they make a choice since they were little that English is easier for them to learn, because they were exposed to me talking English in the house, forcing myself to do it, TV in English, extracurricular activities in English. The school was always in English. I never put in their survey when you enroll a child in school that Spanish is the first language. So I was make sure that they were in directly, that they were not ended up in the EL program, because I knew that they didn't know Spanish. So a lot of them now, I have my niece and I have my daughter, and my niece has this ability to learn Spanish faster than my daughter. She's driven, she wants to. So she learns faster, and my daughter mindset is very negative. So when you translate that to English, a negative mindset in one language transferred to another one. So it becomes more difficult. Learning a language is like exercising. You just don't go to the gym and get out with a six pack, right? It requires effort, attention, and have a mindset, a growth mindset, because you're gonna fail. Like as the students get older, not only is the fact that they are not where they're supposed to be. They know, kids, they know when they're behind, but also the awareness of the social aspect. Like if you mispronounce something, it's embarrassing. So a lot of them, they shield or guard themselves based on the personality, and that learning doesn't get practice. I didn't care what people think. I still don't care what people think. So that was a plus for me, because I have friends who say like, but you speak Spanish, why are you speaking English? I'm like, because I want to, because I want to practice, because it is what it is, right? So I noticed that it comes a lot within yourself, and when you don't have it and you don't have that support system that makes you believe that you can, most likely the progression of learning a new language is going to take longer, way longer, even sometimes not necessarily entirely happening, right? So I think that's why we have students who are exiting really fast, but then we have the ones who are in middle school and still not exiting. And some of them that they go to high school and still don't exit. So I think that is on one-on-one cases, depending on your intrinsic motivation plus your environmental factors and what's going on in your life and the exposure you have and the support system that you have.
Yeah.
Carmen, I love how you talk about like urgency. And I think when you came starting high school, brand new to America, not even knowing how to ask to go to the bathroom, that had to have been really isolating and scary. And there had to have been, culture shock and probably some, depression that would go along with that. If you could teach us, like, what are some things you wish every teacher understood specifically about our English language learners who were not raised in America, who came from different cultures to us, who we might see the first or second day? Like, what are some things you wish we knew, and maybe any strategies that we could use?
So remembering in my experience, I think that yes, you do feel isolated, you feel alone. Even though there's a lot of ELs with you, you still feel like it's like they throw us in a boat and we don't know each other. We don't have connections with each other, right? So why are they gonna be my support system? So I think that teachers need to think like, how would I feel if they drop me in Asia when I don't speak that language and I just left there, right? And kind of like have a little bit more empathy, because empathy doesn't look like, oh, I understand. No, empathy looks like I'm there for you. And I'm going to be consistent with that effort when you're going to see it. And so you are going to trust me. So you can speak however you can, your needs to me, without feeling shame or embarrassment or anything. So I think that they need to focus 100% on the connection and to show their commitment to these kids so they can see that they can trust you. And I say it has to be consistent and it needs time, but they have to be able to see it. And so you can start giving them those little strategies to put in their belts, how to communicate and how to access the language and the curriculum in a way that is more beneficial for them to their pace.
That has really helped me is, one, finding them a really good partner student right away and checking in with both them and the partner student separately to make sure that that's working, and consistently checking in, because sometimes those partner students need breaks and like moved around in different partner students, because I think too often our ELL students get stuck with just one partner student, and oftentimes it's the top performing Spanish speaking student, and that can be burdensome to them. And so making sure that, and it's better for, I think, both if they get multiple partner students to help them in different groupings. And then one thing that I love to do is, as soon as I get them, I find out what their native language is. I try to learn one phrase or word a day, and I have them coach me. And I know, Carmen, you've seen me. I'm really bad at language, and they love it. They love how bad I don't even try to be that good, because I'm not fluent. I struggle with basic things, but they laugh and they get to correct me, and they get to like all of a sudden they get to be the teacher. And so then I'll come teach them something and then they get to teach me something. And it's amazing how quickly they get comfortable in my class by me just being vulnerable. Like I'll start the directions for the class and then I'll say something as simple as like, el papel or levantate, when they stand up, and then I just say it again in the language, the one word they've taught me. And it's so fun because it starts to break the ice by just sprinkling in a few words. And I think it makes it more approachable.
Well, and I think that shows the kids that like you're trying to help them feel comfortable and you're trying to understand where they're coming from and what means something to them. I think that goes a long way to build that relationship.
It does. And when you're in elementary, that's easy to find a partner, but also you have to find a partner who's willing to do it because you don't know what they're saying. You don't speak the language. So how am I what they're really helping them instead of like making feel bad because like, you should understand you're here, So it's finding the right balance to the support that you're giving these kids. I think as an administrator, I invest money in having this EL support, which is a trained adult who goes to these kids who just got here. We call them newcomers, and they get the support that they need. And also, it's kind of like building that relationship. Like teachers can make the effort to learn gracias, adios, like little, like it's not that hard.
Things,
it shows effort, it shows effort, and that effort comes with trust and commitment and consistency. So it's also meeting these kids halfway. Like they didn't make a choice to come here. It's not like they did the process and pay the money or whatever, how it happened. It just happened. And now they're stuck in here and I know they're gonna know it's a blessing, but sometimes you can see beyond what is happening right now. So
I love how you said that about make the effort, because I think if we just flip the table for just a second, we're asking the student to make the effort, not just to learn the language, but our content. And we're expecting that they want to learn, that learning is fun and exciting and intrinsic. And that's what we're supposed to be modeling ourselves. And so even if we're not good at it, we just want our kids to try our subject. We want them to do the best they can. And so I think it's such a great opportunity for us to model that intrinsic love of learning, and also to model, like you said at the beginning, growth mindset, to be like, I'm going to screw up. Help me again. Let's practice. It's okay to practice, and in a safe way that can build community. Yeah.
Correct. Yes, I agree.
I want to know, as an administrator walking around watching teachers, what are things that do you have any things of like, never do this with a non-native speaker? Anything that you think is really toxic or harmful that we need to avoid?
I think that doing a strategy too much. So you mentioned something like, I will assign a student to help the student and support them when the language, right? Yes, it's a great strategy, but when you're doing it too much, then the student is not getting any benefit because the other student is not responsible for the child education. That's your responsibility as an educator. If you as an educator do not have the tools, then go and learn them. You're an adult. You pick this. You're not a tree. If you don't like it, you can move. As easy as it is, right? So, I mean, that's how it is. I mean, you're an adult, you make a choice for this profession and you don't like it, go to a different school, go to a different grade level, go to a different community when they don't have it else. Like, I don't care. You're an adult, you can move, make a choice. Kids can do that. They don't have a choice. They don't even have a choice that you are their teacher, right? So I think that not abusing a tool because it's easier for you. I get it. And then say, how can I help you? As an administrator, I think that just those words like, how can I help you? Tell me, what do you need? And I'll make it happen, right? And if they don't ask me for what they need, they're giving me information for me to assess their needs, because sometimes I don't even know what I need. Like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I just want these kids to learn English, so my job is easier, right? So it's me assessing. Like, sometimes it's like, what is the role of the conversation? Because sometimes it's just venting. Like, I'm very frustrated because I'm doing my best, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, okay, so you need emotional support. But then you have to get that teacher to that point. It's like, there has to be action happening with the student. A textbook that has EL strategies is not going to teach the student to be effective in English, because I'm asking you to read in English. I'm not asking you to learn English, like at least at the elementary level. You're not in a language class. You are learning to read English, hoping that embedded, you're doing those strategies to have access to the new language and it benefit everyone, like having a lot of visuals. Who is not going to benefit from having a lot of visuals? Having the instructions in writing. Who is not going to benefit from having the instructions in writing and there for them to always have access? Having access to technology when they can use translators, having access to other people that may know what they don't know. English, Spanish, Chinese, or anything, those are strategies that I'm going to help ELs to learn the language and make connections. But I'm going to help everybody because that's how ELs learn. You already know your Spanish. You already know your Chinese or whatever language it is. You already know that. So you're getting this new learning and you're connecting it to the one that you already have. So you're making that connection to the new learning because you already know what. And then based on that connection, then you expand it. And so that's how, and in context, in isolation, no language is going to be learned. You can teach me the colors and I may learn them like I know the tables. But if I don't apply that in concepts, in bigger, in stories, then it has no meaning. That is not going to stay. It's going to be something that I memorize and I'm going to push back because I need something else to focus. So you have to always put things in context. And when you connect it to things they understand, the learning is happening. And that's when acculturation comes from. It's like they already know about their customs and their traditions, but if you can attach something that new that they're learning to that, it will make sense. It will raise the engagement for them to make the effort to understand or learn and go out and beyond and expand that learning versus I remember in my first year in the United States, they make me watch the movie The Outsiders, 100% in English. I didn't even know what the movie was about. I'm like, I don't understand anything. I just see it. And I'm like, whatever. I wasn't engaged. I wasn't learning. But I don't remember that experience because the movie was amazing. I remember that experience because how that experience made me feel. And so I think that we forget about how experiences that we're doing in classes in school are making these students feel. They won't forget that. I forget the classroom. I remember the classroom. I remember the teacher. I remember the movie. I remember about everything that's going on because I was constantly looking for context clues to understand what it was happening. So I was super paying a lot of attention to that. And that made me feel horrible because I couldn't access no matter how much effort I was putting. So the teacher let me make the effort to make this accessible to me. So
I think you had so many aha moments in there that I just kind of want to point out. What I'm hearing you say, good teaching for all children makes them believe that they're confident and they can do it, allows them to have access for the material. And I just love what you said about teachers having authentic conversations with admin and coming and saying, this is what I need. How are you supporting this group of students? And then how can I support you? So how can we do this together? And not just sitting in our classrooms and feeling like I don't know what to do, but reaching out and saying, I need more. I, as a teacher, need more support. I need the outsiders, access to the outsiders with
subtitles.
Subtitles. Yeah.
And as an admin, also building that trust with the teachers because we work with a lot of data. Data is, for me, is like so dry. Like, I don't know, like I have this data from this class and then I have this data from these ELs and I see minimal growth. And then I can fill my head with a lot of negative assumptions, like what they're not learning. But reality is, I really don't know. Like if I don't give the teacher the opportunity to explain or me observe or get a bigger picture, I can have these assumptions why the learning is not happening and they're not accurate. So you have to also have a growth mindset to understand that in the empathy and the compassion to see this, okay, this is not happening. Why? It's not because the teacher doesn't want to or the student doesn't want to learn. So I can make that assumption. They're not doing their job. That's an easy assumption. I don't have to go and do anything with it. I don't have to investigate. I don't have to go and talk to anybody. I can just make my mind. They don't want to teach it. They're not doing it right. But reality is that it's my responsibility to go and see and find out why it's not happening and why it's not happening. Then I can support. And because I can meet you halfway too. Like nobody's born knowing how to teach a second language. For me, even teaching Spanish is super difficult. So it's not an easy task. And that on top of like, oh, I'm supposed to teach you this curriculum with this language, how the dual languages classes do right now, is super hard. So, and then these kids go home and they have no access to help because the teachers don't speak the language. And we don't translate anything because guess what? It's too much work. So we don't have to do it. I get it. It's work, but then the consequence or the outcome is like, they're not going to have access to this at home. So if they don't come back with the homework done, how can I blame the student? If I'm not doing my extra, the parent is doing the extra and the student doesn't have the skills to do it himself. So when I used to send home homework in English home, if I didn't give access to the parents to be able to help the students and the homework doesn't come back, then I just had to face the fact that it's not entirely their fault. So why are they going to be penalized? So having this mindset and having this perception of the reality, how it is, it helps a teacher also understand. People can only see from the perspective. That is very difficult. Like I can only see from my perspective. So I understand other perspectives is hard, but reality is not everybody has the life that we have.
I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah, I have students who go home and they don't have access to the parents until probably 10 o'clock. Who wants to do homework at 10 o'clock? I'm an educator and I hate to do homework with my daughter when I have to go from work to meetings and then to karate and then come home. Oh, I still have to feed the child and she has to shower. Oh, homework. I'm like, I can care less about the homework.
Homework is the worst.
Yeah, I'm like the worst parent in education. I'm like, no, we're not doing the homework. I don't care. And I don't want to teach that to my child, but at the same time, it's like I had to give myself grace as a parent and as a person who's hustling in here all the tasks that we have to do. And so these parents sometimes have 2 jobs and they're still living in poverty. They have
I think that's a really good point because that's something that we forget sometimes with our students where we're having them finish things at home or complete assignments or complete research or write a paper or whatever. And with the assumption that they have someone to help them, but a lot of times that's not the case.
And not only that, Candice, is communicating that to the student. It's like, I don't care, that was your homework, 0, you didn't do it. We don't know why they don't do it, right? It can be because they don't care, or because they don't have the skills to do it, or because they don't have this, whatever it is, right?
Or that they're watching their younger sibling all afternoon and helping them get their homework done.
Yeah. So we're constantly assessing and making these assumptions, and mostly are negative, why people don't perform the way they perform. And for students with their homeworks, for teachers, their job, because we don't take the time to go out and about and investigate what is the real reason. So, so I think there's a lot of lack of accountability from professionals in their profession. And I'm not saying just teachers, I mean too, like if I don't take my time to go and investigate, how am I going to find the need? And because sometimes we don't even want to know why, because if I'm going to investigate and I find the need, then my ethical is going to say like, you had to fix it. That's more effort, it's more work. Like I'm not trying to fix the world. I'm just trying to fix these 5 students, So it's a lot of work, but I think that if you're in the educational field, when you're working with people, you're in the people business and you're shaping future leaders or keeping future delinquents out of jail, either or, right? You're just doing that constantly. It's like, if you're in this field, I think that you have to be doing it with your heart. Because if you do it with your brain is going to tell you, why would you care? But if you do it with your heart, then you're just going to do it. And regardless of what you're doing and how it's happening, you just want it to happen, right? So
can I mention a strategy that's really been successful for me that teachers could try? I love to do positive parent contact at the beginning of the year. And I just do it through text because then I can have Spanish and English and it can translate for me. And so always within the first month, I try to have a positive communication to every single one of my students. And it's pretty formulaic. I changed the name, but it's just like, I love having Carmen in class. She's so engaged. And I'll have like 3 or 4 different ones. And then I'll, send them, but they're positive and they reinforce. So I'll send those out in the first couple of weeks and create that connection. And then instead of always doing like candy or extra credit or A's for assignment completion, sometimes I'll send positive texts and kids love this.
Well, yes,
So,
because they only get the negative ones, right?
yeah, especially my ELL students, because a lot of times teachers are afraid to reach out, especially their English teachers. And then sometimes I will, in my very limited Spanish with my text, I will still do positive phone calls. And I'll be like, Carmen es muy simpática, ella es muy inteligente, and I have my little script about how great she is. And then oftentimes the kids will have to come over as we go into a deeper conversation. But that means so much to those parents. And then they'll come to teacher nights, and they'll even sometimes text me in Spanish because they feel like I've made the connection. And even though I don't speak it well, they know I try. So they'll create the connection. And then if they fall behind on their homework, as I go through like more rigid cycles, or I have a big project, like whenever I have a big project due, I send out warnings 2 weeks in advance and say, here's the project, here's when it's due. And I always say, I know you're such a great parent. I've loved talking to you. I know you'll help your student get this done. And I can't believe, like, I work in a school that is, as you guys know, predominantly Hispanic and high levels of poverty. And the projects this year were outstanding. Like, our principal could not believe I had 100% project completion by the end of the year. Now, did I have to go back and help some of them? Did I have to extend deadlines and pick up some of the one? I literally picked up the day of promotion so he could promote, and we were finishing together. But it was so exciting because the kids felt so empowered about what they had done and proud of their projects. And we did a gallery day and showed it off, and the parents got to be involved and bring in their own heritage. And so I would just encourage teachers not to be afraid of the same thing you don't want your students to be afraid of. Don't be afraid of mispronouncing things. Don't be afraid of being vulnerable in front of the parents. I've found it to be actually team building. Like, I found it to be affirming, because then they'll start to speak English to me, and they speak about as good English as I speak Spanish. And so it can be really fun. And the kids get really excited because they'll say things like, my mom will talk to you in English. Do you understand, miss? She doesn't talk to anyone in English, And so we get to be each other's practice buddies. And I just think that's like, so it just makes you feel so good about who you are and what you do. And like you're saying, Carmen, like, we're here for the right reasons. We're all here for the right reasons.
And another thing that you're doing with that is like is the feeling, like, you think that your student is going to remember what the project was about? No, but they're going to remember the experience. They're going to remember something positive that is going to empower them to keep going. These kids come here to the United States to compete for jobs with other kids who are already here their whole life. So they're already at the disadvantage because of the language, and it's not gonna be easy for them. People have these sometimes judgments without, or we can call it like biases, without even realizing it. So we're fighting constantly over a lot of things, and still not feeling like a loser or defeated, or like I want to give up, So when they have emotional experiences in education, like the ones that you're providing, is raising the standard, because once you taste it, guess what? You just want more. You want to feel like that again, right? So you're gonna keep seeking for those opportunities in their future as well, and for the parents too. They want to be involved.
I love that you're coming back to that, because I really do feel strongly that the way you make the kids feel in your classroom is the most important thing you can do. They're gonna learn what they need to learn for what their job is in the future. They'll learn it one way or another, but if you don't make them feel valued or important or smart or able, then they're going to remember that, and that's going to affect them a lot more.
Yes. So I think that how you make a person, and in general, in every aspect of life, people will not remember what you said, but will remember what you said make them feel. And unfortunately, that's the truth. And so when teachers are not aware of the things that they are saying or the interactions they are having, or like, we do have bad days, but that's nobody's fault. Like, we're transferring that to your students, like that makes an impact. And sometimes we don't even realize it. Like, when you're in elementary, it's easy to fix because you have the same students all year. So you have a lot of opportunities to establish those good relationships. So when you made a mistake, they forgive you. Like, they know that you're always good. But when you are in middle school or high school, where you just see those kids 50 minutes a day, you don't have that many opportunities to reestablish a relationship. Sometimes it's even hard to establish a relationship. So even for you as a human, it's like, I had to have talked to 150 parents. How am I gonna do it? So I have a life, so you start doing strategies like copy and paste, have these dojo programs to kind of like massive communication. So it is what it is, at least you're making an effort. So that's what it matters, right? So
thank you for saying that. I'm going to take that as my takeaway moment, because you do feel sometimes like you're copying, pasting a text.
Okay.
It still takes you an hour to like get it to everybody, and you still feel like, oh, I could do that. I feel like you're saying in middle school and high school, we feel like we could always make deeper connections, but there really isn't enough time, and there's just too many kids. So, focusing on the kids who need us, focusing on everybody feeling good when they're around us, but then also, like you were saying, paying attention
to the ones that need a little bit extra, right? So, and just give it to them. Like, kindness is free. Why wouldn't you do that, right? So it's not gonna cost you any penny to be kind to somebody or have compassion or just like acknowledge that someone exists. So just do it.
So for everybody who's watching this video, if you're feeling kind, we would love you to like and subscribe. We have a goal of getting to 500 subscribers, so please help us towards our goal. Candace, are there any other, or Carmen, are there any other comments we want to make as we wrap up?
No, thank you so much for being here with us and having this conversation. I think it impacts our students, of course, but also teachers who are trying to do their best with them in the classrooms. Push them forward.
Please ask us any questions in the comments and we'll have Carmen back.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Yay!
All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching.
That was so good.
Yes. And have a wonderful day. Remember, we're FLAIR because we care.
Yeah, we care.
Bye.